You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
That's not true. That's impossible.
You're listening to episode 81 of Making Tracks. I'm your co-host Mark Newbold, and joining me today is a man who is now, and he doesn't know this, he is a world-renowned Yoda impressionist, Mark Hayden.
Good I am. Yes. I'm good, buddy. I'm very well. How are you?
Good. I'm impressed that I'm working with somebody that's actually got some talent. I can't believe it. I'm very well.
Yeah. Nobody personally has come up to me and said that my Yoda impersonation is of any renown, but hey, I'll take that as a nice win that you've complimented me that. Yes. So how's things with you? How's your week in Star Wars been, my friend?
My week in Star Wars has been, well, it's always busy, isn't it? There's always stuff going on. Collating stuff for this episode and piling stuff onto Fantha Tracks as and when we can and prepping, writing stuff. It's been a busy week. It has been a good week. Doing stuff in the collection room as well, which is always, that never ends. That's an ongoing job. But yeah, been a decent week that, as ever, has gone in a heartbeat. How about you?
Yeah, I've been really busy. Just the last couple of weeks, this makes me sound like some kind of part-timer, but I've actually had 5 days a week on site at work. In the last year or so, that has happened a few times, but probably not as often as obviously it would do before the pandemic. Before the pandemic, I'd be there Monday to Friday. But yeah, the last few weeks has been Monday to Friday, which is a little bit of a shock to the system. But at the same time, it's quite nice because you kind of feel like you're getting back into normality. On the Star Wars front, I've had a few different bits and bobs arrive this week. So I've had some more vintage Star Wars books turn up. I'll pick something and then I'll just go full bore for a few months and then move on to something else. But yeah, how about you? Have you picked up anything nice recently?
It's been a weird week. I've had there's something that came through the post this week that we'll talk about in a few minutes that was really nice. Yeah. I've had Victor's Price has turned up this week, so I'm looking forward to having a little dig through that. I now have on order High Republic Adventures, the IDW comic, so issue 1 of that has come. And a few other bits and bobs for the collection. There's always little knickknacks turning up for the collection, so can't complain.
One thing I did get, actually, and I think you got as well, a set of trading cards and a beautiful A3 print.
It was from Bowman's Green, so it's a small independent publisher, I guess you would call it. Basically, they've taken the classic Marvel 8 from Aduba 3 artwork, which came right after the original adaptation of what was then called Star Wars, but we now call A New Hope. So it's Han and Chewie out having their adventures amongst the stars, and Bowman's Green have taken this artwork, and not only have they turned it into a beautiful, beautiful print in a sort of Spanish movie poster style.
Yeah, it's got a spaghetti western kind of vibe about it.
Exactly, yeah. And it's on acid-free card, so it's great to sort of get framed and put up. But also with it, an accompanying set of 18 trading cards, which all come in their sleeves and such. So absolutely thrilled to get it. Moving quick. I'm hearing there may be a second printing of the first one because it has gone so well. Really, really nice. And if you go to the site and have a look, there's more coming. What did you think of yours? Were you impressed?
Yeah, I really liked him because I did have to then go and do a little bit of research because I'm not of the same generation as such as you. So I haven't read the original Star Wars. So 8 from Aduba 3, that was issue 8, which, so like you said, just came out just after the first telling of Star Wars. And that's basically where they can introduce like a load of new characters like Jackson, most notably, I would think, and a rather voluptuous blonde lady as well.
Yes, Amazer.
Yeah. Amazer, yes.
Don Juan Quixote. There's all sorts of weird characters. It had that quirky feel about it. That sort of run up to Empire Strikes Back before they even knew Empire was coming had that weird quirkiness that now they can go back and pull a character like Valance.
Yeah.
And I would fully expect Bowman's Green to be doing some Valance-related stuff in the future at some point because he's very much of that time period. Really, really nice. Link will be in the show notes. Go and have a look. If you can get it, get it. Well worth it.
Yeah, definitely.
Hi, this is John Morton from The Empire Strikes Back, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
Speaking with Collider this week about all things Doctor Strange and other elements of his career, Benedict Cumberbatch was asked, unsurprisingly, whether or not he would or would be interested in playing Thrawn in a live-action Star Wars production, be it on television or on the big screen. His reaction was quite straightforward and distinct. It was an absolute no. Didn't seem particularly au fait with the character. Now, he does have form of dismissing such things. He was Khan in 2013 Star Trek Into Darkness. Obviously, when asked the question, deflected very, very well until it turned out that he was playing that character. An interview with Collider is probably not the place to announce that you're playing a fan favourite character like Thrawn. Not that he is.
There's a lot of people that would like you to play a character called Grand Admiral Thrawn. And I'm just curious if you've heard people saying this, because I could see you playing this role.
Grand Admiral Thrawn. Does he turn into Peter Cushing or something? Is that
no? He's blue. He's a very cool character. That's a villain that you'd be under like a blue makeup thing. Anyway, I'm just curious if
I think that's a straight no for me right now. There's no way I want to be turned blue. I could turn the air blue very, very recently, but no, seriously, I precious time with my children, and I think sitting in a makeup chair being painted blue and the amount of time it would take to do that and then take it off at the end of the day might just, it's not the right time in my life for that.
So, Mark, what do you think? Do you think he's doing a bit of deflection? Do you think he kind of got caught on the hop? Do you think he's got no knowledge of this character whatsoever? What's your gut feeling?
I mean, in fairness, Benedict Cumberbatch is a brilliant actor, and either he was completely caught on, like I said, off guard from this, or he completely downplayed it and he knows more than he does. And actually, kind of when Vinter kind of tried to explain, and I don't actually really think he did a particularly good job of explaining who Thrawn is. Kind of actually interestingly goes back to the kind of conversation that we had, I think, last week or the week before. But generally, even with some of the sequel trilogy's main stars, have kind of left the door open and have been pretty kind of open. Like, yeah, if something came up, I'd be up for playing something in Star Wars. So to actually have Benedict kind of come about and kind of say pretty categorically no, I think it's quite telling. I think I even said at the point, but one thing that's probably more likely for people to potentially turn down a role categorically like that, especially publicly, like in an interview with Collider, would be something like a massive commitment to having to put on loads of Betic or makeup and stuff like that. To be fair, obviously, I don't necessarily know the steps involved in creating Grand Admiral Thrawn for live action, but from what I can tell, and also from what I've seen from my girlfriend who cosplays as a blue Twi'lek pilot and other kind of members of the 501st who do a Grand Admiral Thrawn character, there's not a huge amount of makeup. It's just a base blue layer. Obviously, you've got to make sure your hair's dark and then red contacts. So I don't actually necessarily think, because the Admiral costume would cover up most of the body, but actually it would probably be that much of a time commitment. But maybe, obviously, Benedict was thinking it could end up looking like somebody like Dave Bautista, who's got a very minimal costume and, a lot of makeup. But he's wrapped up with Marvel, and we don't know how much involvement he's going to have beyond Phase 4, but I'm sure Doctor Strange is going to be several more Marvel films, so maybe he's also thinking, like, do I want to be kind of committing to two big franchises? So maybe he's just actually thinking one big studio franchise is enough for me, and maybe he'll look for something a little bit different afterwards.
That makes sense. I mean, like you say, he's got Strange. He did the Doctor Strange movie in 2016. He's filming Multiverse of Madness right now. He was in Infinity War. He was in Endgame. I think he turned up in Ragnarok as well. Yeah, he did. He was at the start of Ragnarok. Yeah. So he's already played Strange like 5 times. There's talk of him being in No Way Home, the third Spider-Man film as well. Yeah. There's rumours of that. So, he's got his plate full there. Like you say, he's done a lot of other stuff. I think looking at this with Thrawn, you make the great point in that if he did play Thrawn and he did have to have makeup, then really all he has got to do is have the makeup on his face and on his hands and the contacts. But, I think we all know now, visual effects being what they are. If you've seen the Marvel Assembled WandaVision episode where they showed how that was made, you see Paul Bettany, just hilarious with the vision red and the ears sticking out and all the stuff. He just went for it.
Yeah.
But that was slightly different because you would imagine Thrawn would be the main villain in somebody else's story. Maybe he turns up in Ahsoka, maybe he turns up in a film or other projects. He's not going to be front and centre or leading the show to that degree. So if he did play Thrawn, it wouldn't be a long, drawn-out process. But nevertheless, you think special effects being what they are, better foundation, they could probably change the tone of his skin to make him look the blue that they want. They might even have to put the red in his eyes with contacts. Maybe they can do that in post. it probably wouldn't be the torturous makeup chair regime that he kind of alludes to. He would be a great Thrawn. I'd personally like to see somebody that I'm not particularly aware of. You look at Cumberbatch and he has got that angular face, and Thrawn needs that. He is very sharp. You know, he's got the Bowie cheekbones, isn't he? You know, it's that sort of look. Like most of the Marvel actors are, and people kind of forget, we get so hooked into them being these characters, but there's Oscar-nominated and Oscar-winning actors in here. There's like Scarlett Johansson, and Downey Jr. was Oscar-nominated, and Cumberbatch has been Oscar-nominated, and Samuel L. Jackson's been Oscar-nominated, so's Mark Ruffalo. You know, there's so many of them. And then you get down to your Robert Redfords, your Glenn Close, your Michael Douglas, Michelle Pfeiffer's. All Oscar winners are Oscar-nominated. It's the most packed cast ever. And you're coming from Marvel. There's never been a franchise in movies more successful. And then Star Wars has visibly had issues, even though it's making great money. Merchandise-wise, it's ridiculous. Profile-wise, couldn't be higher. Yeah, maybe he's just thinking, do I need it? I don't know. It's an interesting one. It's one to watch, I think, personally.
Yeah,
one to watch.
I think so. The fact that Ahsoka was very kind of front and centre about was her primary mission in season 2 of The Mandalorian, I think by now we can kind of safely say that they don't put in any of these kind of references unless they're going to follow through on it. So you would kind of think that potentially Grand Admiral Thrawn could end up being the equivalent of, say, Moff Gideon in the Ahsoka series.
Agreed.
I don't think that's a big stretch. I suppose one thing that you also have to consider is Lars Mikkelsen, who did do the voice, and I think did a really great voice for Thrawn in Rebels. He is a bona fide actor with, you know, a strong credit list. Potentially, they might actually say, well, this is a point where we could actually take somebody who's done the voice for animated and actually take them completely into live action. Thrawn has always had a very specific look. And to be fair, I've not really kind of sat down and closely compared, for instance, how closely Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka looks to Ahsoka Tano in the animated, like facially, but he just accepted it and brought it. I mean, I know we had this conversation about the Montels being shorter and all that, and that was for stunt work and stuff. But it would be interesting to see what they do, and I'm sure he will turn up. I'm going to mark this down in the predictions rumour notepad that I am keeping now next to the microphone when we record these episodes.
Please do that, because that's a good idea. It's something we can come back to.
Fantatrax. Hoodoo!
Another actor who was in Star Wars before,
and
in 2 movies, and has voiced characters in Forces of Destiny, Kelly Marie Tran, obviously now moved on. She's just voiced the lead in Raya and the Last Dragon, which is going down well on Disney+. But she did get asked about coming back as Rose, and I'll read the quote briefly. I miss Rose. I maybe miss who I was when I played her. I feel like sometimes I don't know that I could play her now. I feel like I'm different. So basically, she's saying that maybe life has moved on for her, and to get back to that character might be a bit of a stretch. My thought on that, and I want to see what you think about this, was as an actor, if you're playing a character over a protracted period of time, let's say Tom Holland, for example, who's played Spider-Man now for 5 years and has said openly, whilst Robert Downey Jr. has said, no, you don't want to be playing Spider-Man for the next 20 years, Tom Holland has actually said, I think I'd really quite like to play Spider-Man for the next 10, 15 years because I'd like to have the character for that long, and hey, it's Spider-Man, and what could I do with that character and show him grow older and learn stuff and become a mentor to others like Iron Man was. That's kind of the thinking of that. Do you think Kelly's selling herself short? Maybe that's what I'm saying. She's clearly got the capacity as an actor to step back into that role in a heartbeat. It's not Shakespeare. Or do you think maybe the external experiences have slightly muddied the waters in making it less attractive for her to go back into that world of Star Wars fandom, which she kind of sits on the edge of now?
Yes, yeah, that's a very good point, actually. I think, to be honest, I kind of would have liked Kelly Marie to maybe have elaborated a little bit more about that, because it was a half-hour conversation and it was quite interesting, but so this was a very small part in this whole interview. I don't even know if it's an interview, it's more of a chat, really.
Yeah,
but
it's a chat, yeah.
I do think it's possibly maybe the effect that fandom has had, and obviously we know that she had a lot, like about a ton of negative kind of social media experience. So I would think that's got to play a big part, or it could just be down to the fact that maybe that was a kind of role that she did then, and now she wants to do something different, and she's kind of moved on. Her career has maybe grown, and she's developed in a different way, but maybe she's now thinking, I don't want to do something like that. I'm hugely up on, big sound stages with, blue screen backgrounds and, having to pretend to ride faviers and all that kind of stuff. Maybe that's not where she wants to do. Maybe she wants to do something a little bit more, I suppose you say, like, humanized and just have a different kind of string to her acting bow. Either way, the negative effect of the social media with the fans and also just the fallout of how polarized Star Wars fandom became after The Last Jedi has probably got to have a certain level of effect on the actors who were in it, especially those actors who were maybe in it who haven't done many roles and were only really in one or two films. I think that's possibly going to have to give you a slight sense of melancholy about the whole thing, really.
You look at what Kelly says here in the next part of what she said. I think so many times in our lifetimes we're constantly growing and learning. And again, the realm of human experience is so limitless. You can be so many different people at one time. But when I think about Rose specifically and who I was then and how I was able to tap into certain parts of myself, I don't know if I could play her again. This is the bit that sticks out to me. I miss parts of her. To me, that's her saying, I was tapping into myself to play Rose. I was tapping into the innocence and the excitement of being in this Star Wars arena as an actress as well as a character within it. And that was kind of taken from her in a very, very public and very
visceral.
Brutal's too strong. But yeah, visceral is a good word. It was ripped from her. And she couldn't be on social media, which she probably loved doing because apart from anything else, it's a way of keeping in touch with your friends. She'd lost that and she couldn't interact with people. And the negativity around the film, of the two films, obviously she was more present in Last Jedi than Rise of Skywalker because of the type of film Rise of Skywalker was. There wasn't that many characters you could focus on, so she was sort of secondary. Like Lando was more prevalent in Empire than it was in Jedi, you could argue. I look at that line, I miss parts of her. To me, that's her saying, I kind of wish I was the girl I was before all this experience happened to me, and maybe I don't want to put myself into that pit again.
Hi, this is Steve Grad from Pawn Stars. I approve and I authenticate Fantha Tracks.
Last weekend, we were treated to watching Daisy Ridley's Soggy Bottom on Celebrity Bake Off on Channel 4, which is all in aid of Stand Up to Cancer. I think it's kind of fair to say that whilst Daisy's winning personality and jovial banter was probably the highlight of the episode, her baked goods aren't likely to win her any ribbons at the community fair. I'll tell you what, let's have a quick listen to some of her experiences.
Oh my God. Are you Daisy Ridley?
Yeah, I am.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I hope you don't mind me asking, but what was it like actually being in that episode of Casualty in 2013?
I get asked this all the time.
Sorry.
He wants a lesson in lightsaber.
Oh, I can do that.
Yeah, go on.
Wow, of all the things I thought might happen, it wasn't this. A little twirl.
Oh.
A little twirl.
Oh, that's nice.
Am I right in saying that's quite a lot of caramel?
Yes.
Right.
I don't know if this is enough chocky. Oh, no. It's actually frozen together. What do I do? The panic is real now.
You have 1 minute left.
Oh, that chocolate is... Oh, I'm that person. I'm the person that everybody laughs at. This is just absolutely rancid.
Make 4 individual vegan chocolate and raspberry tarts.
Oh my God, this is sick! Oh, what? Why is it soggy? Oh, okay. I've got a soggy bottom!
We have 4.
You can tell the pastry is not properly
Yeah, you can.
baked because it's not crisp enough.
Daisy, tell us all about your showstopper. What's your bugbear?
My bugbear is people that leave the toilet seat up when they flush.
So what are you making, a loo?
I'm making a toilet.
Daisy, will there be a poo in the toilet?
Do you know, I was thinking about that. I thought maybe that's one step too far.
Yes.
Bakers, you have 1 hour.
Oh, no! Oh, I'm starting to panic now. I've got the shakes. Oh, no. Oh, that looks absolutely horrid. This is vile. I'm having problems. That doesn't look like a toilet seat.
Time is up.
What a hot mess. Absolute token joke of the group.
Can you explain to me how you made the sponge?
I put it in a bowl and I whisked it.
For how long?
I didn't do it for too long.
How long was that then?
Some few moments. until the big bits of flour were gone.
You overmixed it.
Really?
Yeah, but the cake itself tastes delicious.
Well done.
Thank you.
Well done.
I've had an amazing time, and even though my baking's not great, we've still taken part in Stand Up to Cancer, hopefully raised a lot of money, and hopefully that inspires people at home to potentially get a free fundraising kit, see what they can do, and also get involved.
Who wouldn't want to see Daisy soggy bottom? We want to see everybody soggy bottom on Bake Off. It's kind of part of the fun.
Exactly.
But her winning personality was the best thing about her being on the show. If I was ever invited to Daisy's house for an evening meal, which I never will be, but if I was, I'd just pray that she's got Just Eat on speed dial, because that, I mean, she commentated as she was cooking with words like atrocious and appalling. So she's completely aware of her humour, which was making all the comedians laugh, and there was a few comedians on the show. She ain't going to get a Michelin star for that.
I mean, it sounds like she had a lot of fun doing it. I suppose when you're doing a celebrity charity event such as that, you just got to just enjoy it. I mean, the competition is so secondary to the actual raising awareness for the cause and also just making sure that everybody enjoys and stays with the programme, because, of course, it was spattered with text here and call here and, donate money and stuff. So, interestingly, though, I'm sure she's probably not the only woman in the world who gets a bit peeved with having to kind of put the toilet seat down and stuff like that. So...
No, I thought that was brilliant. I mean, some of the choices for that, yeah, absolutely. I mean, one was a traffic sign, one was a car, one was a boyfriend in bed with a dog on a Sunday morning. Daisy's was a toilet seat with the lid up. And I mean, that's fairly hard to conceptualise as a cake.
Yeah, it's a lot of construction.
Absolutely. You could just about tell it was a cake. And I mean, they all sliced into it and said, yeah, it's not a bad cake. But the bit that made me smile the most was her incredulous face when Paul Hollywood said, "You've whisked it too hard." And she was like, but I think she was sort of basically saying, I sort of stirred it a bit, like 3 stirs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, no, you've done it too much. Yeah, it was brilliant. I mean, hopefully they'll raise a ton of money from it, but I don't foresee Daisy appearing on MasterChef for Professionals anytime soon.
No, but, although actually... it would be quite fun to see on Celebrity MasterChef. I think let's see more of Daisy with or without her soggy bottom, from now on TV.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
So it's fair to say that when The Mandalorian first launched, everyone at Disney and Lucasfilm, and to be fair, I think a lot of fans as well, was quite surprised by its popularity. Disney and Lucasfilm were a little bit caught off guard, and add to that the extra level of security surrounding the project, and in particular a certain little green guy. It's no surprise that LFL didn't want to produce a ton of supporting materials for fear of leaks when the series first dropped. So when the Mando spin-off novel was announced last year as part of the wider Mandalorian publishing program, I at least jumped to Amazon to pre-order the book, as well as the visual dictionary, but skipped to March 2021, and the spin-off book, and indeed the visual dictionary, have now been cancelled. Both DK Books and Del Rey Books basically posted exactly the same tweet, with the only difference being the title that they mention in the post. Due to the ever-expanding world of The Mandalorian, we will no longer be publishing The Mandalorian original novel, or The Mandalorian Ultimate Visual Guide, at this time, as the story continues to unfold on screen. So obviously it's a disappointment, but in some respects it could be argued that this doesn't tie down the creators to any expanded universe-style story points that may obviously then they have to retcon in subsequent series. So what's your take on this then, buddy? Do we accept this at face value, that it is just because they want to allow the creative freedom to Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni? Or could this all possibly be related to the whole Cara Dune cancelling, and that maybe perhaps the publishing arm is now getting back in line with the rest of the Lucasfilm licensees?
That's an interesting take. I honestly hadn't considered that. I don't think that's it. When they announced that Mandalorian publishing run of books that they sort of put out there, including these two, I know a few of us, I think we mentioned it on Cannon Fodder, this is a show that's just finding its style and finding its feet, and it found it very well because it's the most consistent show. You watch episode 1, or you watch episode 16, or chapter 16, I should say, and there's this completely on point. And from what I understand, Favreau and Filoni are very on top of any content to do with The Mandalorian, anything at all. It needs to pass their desk, essentially. I'm maybe over-egging that a little bit, unlike Daisy. They're very on top of what comes out under the banner of The Mandalorian. I like that, because that means there's that quality control and there's that complete confidence that it's going to all have the same tone. For example, if they had have done an IDW comic, or if they had have done a Marvel comic, or Adam Christopher's novel, or all the stuff, less the DK book, weirdly. I think the DK book, because those Ultimate Visual Guide type books aren't telling you a story and they're not from a point of view, they are very much the facts. If you like I'm writing for Fact Files at the moment in Spain, you're not giving an angle, you're presenting information from across the scope of the Star Wars saga about a planet or a character or whatever it might be, as factually as possible, without an opinion, essentially. So I think it's a shame. It's more of a shame in a way that the Ultimate Visual Guide isn't happening, because that would have given us some nice insight into his equipment, into the Razor Crest, into the places he'd been. I'm always moaning, hands up, admittedly moaning, that they never nailed down locations of planets and things like that. I think that could have been somewhere we would have seen that sort of information. So I feel the loss of that, in a way, more than the novel, because I've got no doubt Adam Christopher's done other stuff. He's still working on stuff, I'm sure. I think you'll see an Adam Christopher Star Wars book that won't be The Mandalorian. It'll be something else, I assume. I can't imagine them binning him off. There have been other books in the past that have been cancelled. The Sword of the Jedi, exactly, that's one. Elaine Cunningham, I think, did a book that never came out. So there have been Star Wars books in the past, and there's been others going further back than that were written. I mean, there was one, and I forget, Heart of the Jedi, I think, that was way back in the mid-90s, right in the thick of that Children of the Jedi era, that was written and never came out because things changed. So it has happened before. It's not without precedent. But nevertheless, I kind of get why they've done this. Ever since Bob Iger said that we're kind of building a Mandoverse, and not in the same way that they're doing a Spider-Verse thing or anything, but I think what he meant was that you've got that core show that's been such a hit that, like you just said, I don't think that they were expecting it to be the monster hit that it was. Even though it's Star Wars, it's been like a monster, like biggest show in the world.
Yeah.
I think with Star Wars, to lay down stuff in print, because they want to do this shared universe between books, comics and film and TV, and it should be immutable. It shouldn't be contradicted. If they stick to what they said, and they're a bit more fluid on it these days, but if they're going to put it in print, if they're going to put it down somewhere, that should be how it is. And so I kind of get why they've done it. What are your feelings? Do you think the Cara Dune thing comes into play?
I think it does a little bit. I really think it does. Possibly not so much with the novel, but maybe with the visual dictionary. And that's what I think is a little bit annoying, because actually, to be fair, I'm with you. I think the visual dictionary, bearing in mind that we've had one from episode 1 onwards, pretty much, for every film. If you look at some of Rise of Skywalker visual dictionary, you get quite a lot of backstory to things. Pablo Hidalgo does a good job of fleshing out all these things that you can't spend time talking about on screen. If you were to just say, get to season 3 or season 4, then do one once the Mandalorian's almost wrapped, you're then only going to basically focus on like the main characters, because you're just, unless it's like 300 pages, you're not going to have enough kind of like real estate to do that. Maybe it's been kicked around. Maybe they thought, well, we could just remove the Cara Dune pages, and maybe it's just a case of just removing any imagery of her. That would probably be quite an easy edit. But then maybe actually by doing that then opens themselves up. And it seems like at the moment, the mere omission of the character is going to get people, on social media and get their backs up. So potentially just cancelling it, letting things cool down, is probably not a bad thing. Also, bearing in mind, it's not just the Mandalorian series. It's now also, how does the Mandalorian series connect to Ahsoka and connect to Rangers of the New Republic and all those other series that are going to spin off from the Mandalorian? They're at that point, and it's a bit like why I guess they didn't really release any Luke Skywalker novels throughout the sequel trilogy in that kind of era. I always kind of wanted like a Luke Skywalker and a Ben novel, a bit like we got with the Kylo Ren comic series. But I kind of wanted a novel where, they go off and they do stuff. But of course, then you don't know how that's going to, affect or contradict maybe what was seen in The Last Jedi, or potentially what could happen in The Rise of Skywalker. So I can kind of see it from both perspectives. I mean, Tinfoil Hat is, from what I saw on some kind of like Facebook groups and stuff, they were totally nailing it down to, it's definitely because Cara Dune and Cancel and Gina and all that stuff. But then actually you take a step back, you think, well, if things are being micromanaged by Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, and to be fair, they probably need to be to get this kind of universe off the ground at this juncture, then you can go, well, that makes a lot more sense. Maybe in 3 or 4 years' time, then it's fine. But then I guess the risk that we have with all these series is that once they finish, are we going to be that fussed about if we get like a Din Djarin book? Because we're going to be moving on. And I think we're getting into that stage of Star Wars where we've got so much stuff coming up that we're going to be constantly looking for the new stuff. And things will start to feel a little bit dated when they kind of shoehorn in a book a couple of years after like a series finished.
Rise of Kylo Ren is a comic series. Charles Soule's, was it 4-parter?
Yeah, that's right. It
was a great read, and people really got into it. And it was a big announcement when it was announced. I think it was in New York. And so people really got into that, and I really enjoyed it. It was a great read. I would love to read a Luke story, a Luke and Ben story, because I think back to when we had the prequel trilogy. So Jude Watson did so many books, probably more than any other author, to be honest. And you look at some of those stories, giving a bit of information on their history pre-Phantom Menace. Because we've got Book of Boba Fett coming, then we've got Season 3 Mando coming, then we've got Ahsoka, and then we've got Rangers and the New Republic, and then we've got other stuff coming, and Rogue Squadron, and yada, yada, yada. We will only ever look ahead to what's coming, or left and right to what's with us. We won't, with these current and recent Star Wars stories, ever get the chance to go back to Solo, a Star Wars story, and learn a bit more about Kira, or learn a bit more about Beckett, or learn a bit more about Dryden Voss, or any of those characters, where in the past, because we got less of it, we dove into it more, and we learnt more about previous films than we probably ever will about the current films. I do think that's terribly sad. And there's only so much money in pockets for people to be able to keep up with this stuff. I struggle to keep up with what I get. I'm sure it's the same for you. And I know it's the same for plenty of other people. It really is a struggle. In terms of these stories, there will be a Mandalorian novel at some point. By the looks of it, probably nearer the end of that journey than the start of it. And the Cara Dune thing, there's such a danger. This is a whole other conversation, which we have touched on before. But I think there's such a danger of pretending that Cara Dune never existed. If I put Disney Plus on and they trimmed out those Cara Dune scenes or replaced her with another actress, I really wouldn't be impressed by that. No. Because what happened, and they've drawn a line in the sand, and that is that. But to pretend the character never existed or had no influence or effect on the story of Din Djarin and the Mandalorian and the search for Grogu's people and all the other things that she, as a character, I'm talking about Cara Dune now, not Gina Carano, but as a character was involved in, really does, you're knocking the foundations out of the story there. So I wouldn't be impressed by that. But yeah, I think in time, maybe get 2 or 3 seasons in. Maybe they just thought, wow, we've got a season of this coming every year. It's not like doing a visual dictionary for Attack of the Clones and we just do one and that's it. Or back in the day when they did the vehicles one and then they do a cross-sections, which I miss the cross-sections and stuff like that. They're doing these visual guides that kind of catch all. The Art of the Mandalorian Season 1. There's going to be a Season 2 version of that out later this year before Season 3 arrives and so on and so forth. It's a big publishing program. But yeah, it is a shame that we're not getting these, but I kind of get it.
Hi, Paul Blake here, Greedo from Star Wars A New Hope, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
So, Mark, I did not know about this because I checked my sack and it was empty. I understand that a listener's question has sneaked through the letterbox at the last minute.
It has. I mean, to be fair, delving deep into our still fairly empty sacks, and I'm starting to think that I think we might need to go and visit a doctor about this. But we've had an email from Eric from France.
Okay.
And it was quite a complimentary letter, and I'll do this not in a French accent because I will just literally offend everybody, like the English and the French and everybody else in between. Okay, so bonjour, Mark and Mark. I've been listening to your show as a way to help me learn English in an informal setting. I find the English lessons I received from my education very functional, but I find it very hard to make small talk and strike up casual conversations. So firstly, I want to thank you for helping me on this matter, which I thought was quite nice. Bearing in mind actually how me and you two actually talk, and I don't think we are good role models for anybody.
We're not ambassadors for the language.
Definitely not. I would like to know how you started collecting. I am new to Star Wars and only considering myself a fan since The Last Jedi, and I'm a little bit unsure where I should start collecting. Should I buy the original figures or buy the newer ones? Thank you for all your time you put into this show and the hard work that goes into Fantha Tracks website. Greetings from Lyon, France, Eric.
From my point of view, because I'm 50 in 2 weeks' time, so I'm a proper old fart now, which sounds weird saying it, but it's true. So I've been collecting Star Wars since it came out. So my first figure was Death Star Droid. My first comic was issue 6 of Star Wars Weekly. First proper adult novel I read was A New Hope, or Star Wars, the Alan Dean Foster, inverted commas, George Lucas version of Star Wars. So I've been there from the beginning. So for me, I know nothing else. I've just collected it as it's come. If I was, let's say, I don't know how old... Was it Eric?
Yeah, Eric.
Yeah, I don't know how old Eric is. So he says he's just getting into it and just started. So let's say he's 15. I don't know, I'm picking an age. Let's say he's 15. And Star Wars is around now and he's just got, the time and the interest and the financial ability to start getting stuff. I would start with whatever is coming out right now, because he got hooked fairly recently. So if he's a Last Jedi guy, he got into it when he was 12, and he's just going to start collecting the figures. So there wasn't a crazy amount of figures from The Last Jedi. So I would say if that's the film that got you into it, I'd go back and get the main wave of figures from Last Jedi. I'd certainly buy Jason Fry's novelisation. I'd certainly, depending on what access you've got to things like Audible, I'd consider downloading the audio book of that and listening to that. It's a given that you get the soundtracks. And really try and get the soundtracks for as much Star Wars as possible, because I find with what I do, with the writing and doing the site and all the other things, every day there's Star Wars music playing in the background. So that, for me, that's an absolute staple, is get the soundtracks for as much as you can. In terms of going back, maybe you're the same, Mark. I mean, Sansweet said it years ago. Steve Sansweet said it years ago. Even he can't get everything.
Yeah.
So you do have to kind of pick your battles. A lot of people will be focus collectors. So I've got a lot of friends like Matt Booker's a Boba Fett guy, Richard Hutchinson's R5D4, James Burns collects the Shadow Trooper, the black armoured stormtrooper.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There's different people who have different focuses of characters, and some people will focus on a specific film as their focus. If you're going to pick a film, I'd say Solo: A Star Wars Story is a great one, because they didn't release a crazy amount of stuff. So if you want to make that film your focus, that's a good one to do. Historically, when you look back, there'll be less stuff from Force Awakens than there was from Phantom Menace. In those intervening years, companies like Sideshow and Gentle Giant and most licensees will regularly get, a lot of Hasbro do it, with waves of stuff coming out. You've got Return of the Jedi 40th anniversary in a couple of years' time, so Hasbro will be releasing figures inevitably from Return of the Jedi. They'll probably do a retro wave, and they're going back to a film that came out 40 years ago, but in 40 years' time, they almost certainly won't be going back to Mandalorian Season 1 or The Rise of Skywalker. So the further in you get, the less product there will be, because you've got that massive spread of previous films that are guaranteed hits. They know if they release a new Darth Vader figure. Kota-Bakir have just released a steampunk Darth Vader. It looks incredible. It's got nothing to do with the films. It was designed by R.D. Granoff, the Marvel guy, but it looks incredible, and that will sell out. No doubt that will sell out. So I would say, really, you're in a nice position. If you want to get collecting and start going back, you can really cherry pick. Find some good eBay sellers. There's places you can find on Facebook, lots of collectors groups. You don't need to be spending crazy money. And then as you move forward, if you stay with it, which hopefully you will, you'll come into these new shows as they get announced. You'll probably be into the books and reading the comics, and you just go with it going forward. But I wouldn't put too much thought into it. I'd stick with what you've started with and move forward with it, and don't try and get everything. It's impossible. And just go with your gut. That's my opinion. I don't know what you think.
I think buy what makes you happy, for one. Buy what you can afford, for two, because Eric mentioned about buying vintage stuff. And at the moment, vintage is having this kind of real renaissance, because people of my generation, and I would call myself second generation Star Wars fan. I was born in 81. So my first kind of Star Wars experience was VHS at probably about 6 or 7. But I didn't start collecting until I was 11 or 12. And that was smack bang when Heir to the Empire trilogy came out. And so my first Star Wars figures were Power of the Force 2 figures and their Star Wars Bendums, which I think every collector of a certain age should have in their collection. At the moment, we're also in a really good position that there's quite a lot of Hasbro figures coming out all the time. If you're not necessarily sure what you like or you don't like, just buy little bits and bobs. I mean, both me and Mark, actually, we don't have focused collections. We just kind of collect what we want. I don't have every single Star Wars figure. I don't collect 6-inch Black Series just because of space. So I collect the vintage collection figures just because, A, they look small, but also 3 3/4 inch is the scale that I grew up on. And and obviously as you get older, I mean, every few months or so, I might buy kind of like a collector's piece. So it might be a Gentle Giant or it might be a Sideshow. But obviously those cost a lot of money. And what I see, and actually what I sometimes see with people coming into the collection, especially those who want to buy vintage figures, they kind of want to buy everything all at once. They don't want to take a year or 2 years or however long it took me to get my full 96 run of vintage figures, but they kind of almost want to buy everything up straight away. If you've got the money to do that, more power to you. But actually, you kind of then don't appreciate the stuff.
Yeah.
Actually, sometimes when you've got a few figures that are a bit of a chase, and either you can't find it in a condition that you're happy with without your price range, then actually, I'm going to sound like a parent now, but maybe save up for it. And it's something that I'm really bad at doing. I never listen to my own advice. I'm kind of like, I buy all my Star Wars on payday, normally because it comes from all over the world, but actually it kind of filters out and comes across the month. But it's very rare that I actually have to kind of turn around and go, right, to buy something, I'm going to have to actually put money aside and then buy it. So I should probably take my own advice, and maybe I might even find that actually I appreciate more of the items that come to me a little bit more, because you do sometimes kind of get into that habit where, like, you know, especially with, like you said, the small little bits and stuff, like, it's like you look at it and you're like, oh, that's cool. And then you put it in a drawer, you put it on a shelf, and then you probably won't even think about it. I mean, I know there's drawers in my collection, but I probably haven't opened for about a year or so because they're full.
Same.
And you kind of go, okay. I mean, I could roughly tell you what's in there, but I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly everything. And then you pull the drawer open and suddenly you're like, oh my God, I've already got that. or you go, oh crap, I've actually got this now 3 times. It can do, yeah. So at this point, you know, if you're starting out, just buy what makes you happy, buy what you want to. If you are going down the vintage route, make sure you head to the Imperial Gunner website, because one thing that I think you need to educate yourself a little bit on is the vintage collection. Like Mark said, eBay is a great place to pick up stuff. And sometimes if you kind of like search for stuff which have got misspellings and stuff, you can pick up stuff cheaper.
Be open-minded. Don't be a completist, because that leads to madness. There's definitely, and I found it more back in the day than I do now, I get a thrill out of finding things on eBay that I'm missing. I enjoy it. Nothing compares to going into a shop or going to a convention, going to an old memorabilia or somewhere like that, and actually physically finding it. I was a comic collector, like a Marvel comic collector in the 80s and 90s. And when you found that missing issue at like a UK Comic Art convention or some of the conventions they would have in Birmingham, every other week end was a convention in Birmingham, you'd go in and find that missing issue of West Coast Avengers or missing issue of Web of Spider-Man or whatever it might be. The thrill, I've never felt it since. And so it's the same when you find certain Star Wars things. So you'll find all these quirky little things and never let it become a stress or a hassle. It's not worth it. It's always got to be fun.
Amen to that. Eric, thank you very much for the question. Actually, to be fair, me and Mark probably talk about collecting for hours, and probably as soon as we finish recording, we're going to carry on talking about collecting. So what we should probably do is wrap up this episode. So anybody else, if you've got a question, by all means, please send it in. And like I said before, don't be shy. If you want to send in a voicemail or like an audio message or something, that would be awesome, because then we can slot it in. I don't need to read it out. Mark doesn't need to read it out. And that saves us a little bit of breath. If you want to get in touch, my good friend is going to be able to tell you how you can do it.
If you want to be part of the action and stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, visit fanthatracks.com or check out the free Fanthatracks app through the App Store to follow us on your mobile device. You can reach out to us and send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@fanthatracks.com. And like I say, you can also send in an audio clip if you want to hear yourself on the show. That's perfectly fine. Comment, like and share on any of our social media feeds @Fanthatracks, and be sure to subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Semple for composing the Fanthatracks intro, Adam O'Brien for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers.
Dude, have a good week, and everybody else, stay safe, take care, may the Force be with you.
Coming up next on Fanthatracks Radio, it's another episode of Making Tracks.
Free!